Narcissists thrive on control. They manipulate, they twist reality, and they feed on the emotions of others, as if those emotions are a life-giving force. For a narcissist, every interaction is a calculated game, a chance to prove their superiority and maintain their fragile sense of power. But what happens when they meet someone who sees through the mask? Someone who feels deeply, understands intuitively, and cannot be fooled for long. That someone is an empath. And here's the sad truth for narcissists. They are powerless against the strength and quiet insight of a true empath. On the surface, the narcissist may seem to be winning. They may charm, they may dominate conversations, and they may appear to have all the power in the relationship. But an empath's very nature, their ability to feel what's unspoken, to see what's hidden, and to understand what's not being said, is a direct threat to the narcissist's entire existence. The empath does not have to fight the narcissist's power, they only have to be themselves. In this video, we'll dive into the psychology behind why narcissists fear empaths, how empaths naturally dismantle their power, and what this means for anyone who has ever felt trapped in a toxic relationship. We will uncover the true source of the narcissist's power and the profound internal weakness that lies beneath their mask. By the end, you will understand that your quiet empathy is not a weakness, but a superpower that the narcissist cannot compete with. Stay with me, because once you understand this dynamic, you'll see why empaths always hold the quiet advantage, why narcissists need control. To truly understand why narcissists are powerless when facing empaths, you first have to see clearly the deep psychological need that drives nearly every single thing a narcissist does. Psychologists explain that narcissists rely on something known as narcissistic supply. This supply is made up of attention, admiration, praise, and, most importantly, emotional reactions from others. Without a constant flow of this supply, their fragile sense of self begins to fall apart. A narcissist cannot create their own lasting self-worth from within. It's as if they are like a car with no engine. No matter how polished the outside looks, without someone else fueling them, they simply cannot move. Their sense of identity depends on others. They need someone else's applause to feel admired. They need someone else's fear to feel powerful. And they need someone else's tears to feel significant. This hunger for supply is not just a want or preference. It is more like an unending addiction that can never be satisfied. Every action, every scheme, every manipulation is part of that hunger. This is why narcissists seek out people they think they can dominate and control. People who will constantly validate their ego, absorb their negativity, and allow them to drain their emotional energy without question. They are skilled manipulators, experts at scanning people and finding out who is most likely to play along with their games. Empaths are often their favorite targets, precisely because empaths seem like the perfect source of never-ending supply. An empath's natural ability to listen deeply, their tendency to forgive easily, and their desire to see the best in people become qualities that the narcissist twists and exploits for their own selfish gain. They will use your compassion to keep you sitting and listening to their endless stories of victimhood or glory. They will rely on your forgiveness to excuse their betrayals, their lies, or their cruelty. They will lean on your kindness to convince you that you are the only one who truly understands them, the only one who can save them from themselves. For them, control is not optional, it is necessary. Without control over you, they cannot guarantee their supply, and without supply they feel as if they are nothing. But here's what reveals the truth. Have you ever noticed how frantic they become when you stop reacting? That desperation exposes what lies underneath the mask. It shows that their power is not real. Their so-called strength is not something they actually possess. It's borrowed power, power that only exists because they have convinced you to hand it to them. The moment you decide to stop reacting, the moment you stop playing along with their game, it's like pulling the plug from their life support. You cut off the emotional energy they survive on, and what is left behind is a terrified, hollow shell of a person who does not know how to exist without your reactions. Their frantic gaslighting, their cruel insults, their dramatic silent treatments, all of these behaviors are not signs of strength at all. They are signs of deep weakness, of a desperate attempt to pull you back in. Each tactic is just a plea for you to re-engage, to give them one more emotional reaction, because without it they feel themselves falling apart. Their strength has never been real. It only lives as long as someone else is willing to feed it. This is where empaths stand apart. Empaths are wired differently. They feel things deeply. They notice small changes in behavior, and they pick up on subtle energy that others might completely overlook. At first glance, this sensitivity can seem like a weakness, almost like a flaw that makes them easy targets for manipulation. And for a while, a narcissist might succeed in using that sensitivity to control them. But over time, what once looked like weakness reveals itself as the greatest strength of all. Empaths can see through the illusions. They can feel what isn't being said. They sense when words don't match intentions. Their quiet ability to feel the truth becomes the one thing that no narcissist can fight against. A narcissist can lie to the world, but they cannot easily lie to an empath's intuition. Psychologists emphasize this unique ability of empaths, the natural gift of detecting emotional dishonesty. While others might be dazzled by a narcissist's charm or fooled by their smooth performance, the empath senses that something is off. They can feel the coldness behind the warm smile. They sense the hollowness behind grand gestures of love or generosity. They detect the deep insecurity hiding beneath the arrogant mask of superiority. This awareness doesn't come from analyzing every word. It's not a conscious choice. It is a gut feeling, an unexplainable knowing that something doesn't add up. That feeling might be ignored at first, but it never goes away. Eventually it grows stronger and clearer, until the empath can no longer deny it. And that's the turning point. That's when the illusion begins to crack. Once the empath recognizes the pattern, the narcissist's grip begins to loosen. The gaslighting doesn't confuse them anymore. The insults no longer pierce as deeply. The silence no longer feels like punishment. Suddenly, the narcissist's performance is exposed for what it truly is. A desperate act designed to cover emptiness. The game falls apart, the mask slips, and the power the narcissist thought they had fades into nothing. Think about it. Have you ever had that powerful moment of clarity? That sudden realization when you finally saw through someone's manipulation? Maybe it was the moment when you heard a lie and instead of questioning yourself, you knew instantly that it was a lie. Or maybe it was the moment when you finally noticed that their grand gestures meant nothing, because you could feel the emptiness behind them. That moment of clarity is your empathy working as your greatest shield. It is your built-in protection, and it is always the first and most important step toward your freedom. When an empath starts to truly see what is going on, when they finally put the puzzle pieces together between the strange, confusing, and often painful behavior of the narcissist and their own deep intuitive feelings, something powerful begins to happen. In fact, 3 very specific shifts take place, and each one slowly but surely weakens the narcissist's illusion of control. These moments of change don't arrive all at once, but step by step, and with every step, the narcissist's grip begins to loosen. The first shift is awareness. An empath starts to open their eyes and see clearly. They realize that all the manipulation tactics, the gaslighting that makes them question their own memory, the guilt-tripping that makes them feel responsible for everything, and the love-bombing that once felt so warm but later turned into control, are not random signs of a hurt person needing help. Instead, they begin to see these actions as carefully chosen weapons of abuse, used to keep them in place. This recognition is like a light turning on in a dark room. Once it happens, the empath can no longer be fooled by the shadows. This awareness is strong, steady, and impossible to undo. It becomes a truth they carry with them, a truth that marks the first and most important step toward breaking free. After awareness comes boundaries. A narcissist thrives on people who have no limits, people who will bend, give in, and provide endless supply. But once an empath understands the pattern, they begin to draw a line. They stop answering messages at all hours. They refuse to give in to endless demands, and they no longer let guilt be used as a leash to control them. Every time they say no, every time they protect their own energy, they are showing themselves respect. And this act of self-respect is not just healing for the empath, it's also a direct strike against the narcissist's sense of control. To a narcissist, boundaries feel like walls closing in, because without unlimited access to the empath's energy, their power begins to fade. The third shift is detachment. An empath learns that they do not need to give the narcissist emotional fuel anymore. They stop offering anger, sadness, or even hope that the narcissist might change. They stop begging to be understood, and they stop trying to make the narcissist see their side. Instead, they begin to practice what is often called the gray rock method. Like a dull, emotionless stone, they give nothing to react to. They become calm, flat, and uninterested. For a narcissist, this is the worst possible outcome, because it deprives them of what they crave most, emotional reactions. Without that supply, the narcissist begins to wither. Step by step, awareness, boundaries, and detachment. Each one chips away at the narcissist's carefully built illusion of power. Together, they form a silent but unstoppable force. To a narcissist, an empath represents a very real danger, not because the empath fights loudly or aggressively, but because the empath quietly and steadily sees the truth. A narcissist survives in a world built on illusion, a world where their lies are treated as facts, where their stories are believed without question, and where their manipulations go unnoticed. But an empath, with their deep intuition and their ability to sense what others often miss, becomes a living threat to that world. They don't need to shout or expose the narcissist publicly. Simply by seeing clearly and refusing to play along, they shake the very ground the narcissist stands on. An empath becomes a quiet but unmovable force of truth in a life full of lies, and that truth is exactly what the narcissist fears the most. No matter how forgiving or compassionate empaths may be, they cannot be tricked forever. Their natural intuition is always working in the background, connecting dots, pulling threads together. Eventually, the contradictions and lies of the narcissist no longer match the empath's inner knowing. And once that connection happens, once the empath finally trusts their inner voice, the game is effectively over. The narcissist's power begins to crumble because their manipulation no longer works. What makes the empath so powerful is not loud confrontation, but quiet certainty. They do not need to argue, yell, or prove their case. Instead, they stand in a calm truth that cannot be shaken. The narcissist may rage, accuse, or try to twist the story, but without a reaction, it all falls flat. It becomes like a play performed on a stage with no audience, just noise with no effect. The narcissist is left shouting into emptiness, trying to provoke a response that will never come. Even more than this, empaths hold up a mirror to the narcissist simply by refusing to play their game. A narcissist's entire life is built around filling the emptiness inside of them with constant external validation. But when an empath chooses not to provide that validation anymore, they reflect the narcissist's own hollowness right back at them. It is like holding up a mirror to show them the emptiness they are running from. And for someone who hides behind masks and illusions, nothing is more terrifying than being seen clearly for what they really are. The sad truth for narcissists, the reality, as many psychologists explain, is that narcissists cannot truly overpower empaths once those empaths wake up to the truth. Their tactics, their manipulations, their tricks, all of it becomes useless once the empath stops reacting. The entire system of control that the narcissist relies on depends on emotional responses, but when an empath learns to detach and withdraw their reactions, they pull that system apart piece by piece. In simple terms, manipulation stops working. The narcissist tricks are like keys. They only function if the empath turns them. But once the empath sees the game clearly, they refuse to turn the key. They no longer engage, they no longer react, and without that engagement, the narcissist is left powerless. Their strongest weapon, the ability to provoke emotions and use those emotions as fuel, slips right out of their hands. And for a narcissist, there is no greater loss. Rage no longer has the same power it once did. The explosive anger of the narcissist is designed to frighten you, to make you shrink back, and to keep you in a state of fear, so that you give in to their control. But when an empath has found their strength, that fear no longer works. Instead of being shaken by shouting, intimidation, or sudden outbursts, The empath stands calm and steady. Their inner peace becomes stronger than the noise around them. What once felt terrifying now looks almost pitiful, a desperate display of a person trying to hold on to control they no longer have. The narcissist's fury loses its purpose and reveals itself for what it really is, not a sign of power, but a loud cry of weakness. The silent treatment also loses its grip. In the past, silence from a narcissist might have felt unbearable. It was used as a weapon, meant to make you doubt yourself, to feel so unworthy that you would chase after them, begging for their attention again. It was a punishment meant to break you down. But when an empath begins to value themselves, that silence no longer cuts as deeply. Instead of running back, they use those quiet moments to breathe, to think clearly, and to find peace within themselves. What was meant to be painful becomes a gift of space, a chance to heal. The narcissist is left without the reaction they crave, sitting alone with the emptiness they were trying to escape. And as time passes, the truth becomes clear. The narcissist is left with nothing but their own emptiness. This is the sad reality. While the empath walks away to live with freedom, peace, and authenticity, the narcissist remains stuck, trapped in a prison of their own making. They cannot escape themselves, and no amount of rage, silence, or manipulation can change that. The empath, however, grows stronger. They don't just survive the experience, they rise above it. In the quietest way possible, they win. If you see yourself as an empath, or even simply as someone who is deeply intuitive and sensitive, remember this truth. Your sensitivity is not your weakness. It is your greatest strength. Narcissists build their entire sense of control on exploiting emotions, but empathy is the very force that dismantles that power. When you sense dishonesty, when you feel the emptiness behind a grand gesture, or when something inside you warns that words do not match actions, you are not being too sensitive. You are using your power. Your empathy allows you to see the truth they are trying to bury, the truth they cannot afford for anyone to notice. And once you see it, you cannot be fooled again. Choosing to walk away, putting boundaries in place, and protecting your peace is the real victory. A narcissist wants conflict, because conflict is their arena. It is the game they know how to play, and they expect you to play it by their rules. But when you refuse, when you step out and choose not to participate, you change everything. You no longer give them fuel, and you no longer live by their design. You create your own space, one built on peace, authenticity, and freedom. And in that space, you always win. Think about your own journey for a moment. What's one way you've already used your empathy as a source of strength, rather than as something that made you feel weak? Perhaps you trusted your gut and walked away from a toxic relationship. Or maybe your empathy helped you recognize genuine loving connections that a narcissist could never create. These moments are proof that your empathy is not a burden. It is your shield. It is the very thing that keeps you safe, that guides you, and that makes you stronger than the lies or games of any narcissist. So, here is the sad truth for narcissists. They cannot truly win against empaths. No matter how much they manipulate, twist, or control, an empath's quiet strength will always reveal the truth. Their lies will always fall apart in the face of clear intuition. Their power is an illusion that fades when the empath no longer feeds it. The greatest fear of the narcissist has always been exposure, and the greatest power of the empath is the ability to see and feel that exposure without effort. That is why, in the end, the narcissist is always defeated by the very truth they tried so hard to hide, and the empath's strength remains steady and real. If this message gave you insight or a moment of clarity, take a second to like, share, and subscribe. You may never know who else could be struggling in silence and needs to hear these words today. Your support helps spread awareness and might be the spark that helps someone else find their way toward freedom. And never forget this: your empathy is not a weakness. It is your shield, your protection, and your strength. It makes you unshakable in ways a narcissist will never understand. No matter how much they try, your empathy will always carry you further than their illusions ever could.